Koyuki Hikawa is just trying to be a good classmate. She reaches out with a borrowed notebook, but her blunt bangs and sharp gaze turn a simple favor into a high-stakes confrontation. She looms over him, her expression a frozen mask of accidental menace. Tanaka isn't seeing a helpful peer, he's looking at a predator delivering a summons. She just wanted to return his work. Koyuki walks away, her steps rhythmic and solitary, leaving a wake of pure terror behind her. Tanaka practically vibrates with relief as he manages one final trembling thought. Scary. Behind her back, the legend of the Queen grows. They say she's a glacier that won't melt, an untouchable delinquent in a school full of introverts. But while the class gossips about her cold vibe, Minato Amamiya is busy praying to the gods of class changes to land him next to his crush, Miki Izumi. The winter air bites, sending a stray leaf tumbling past. Koyuki shivers, huddling into her jacket as the season turns. The world outside is just as cold as the reputation she can't seem to shake. She watches the days blur together. Her first year is slipping away like sand, leaving her with nothing but silence and the hollow comfort that at least it isn't as bad as middle school. She catches her reflection in the glass, a thumb pressed to her chin. People look at her and see a threat, but all she sees is a girl wondering if her face is just naturally broken. I mean, I can't be that scary, can I? She experiments with her own skin, pulling her cheeks into a goofy, squished mask, just to see if it makes her look human. It's a private, silly moment until a second face appears in the glass. Minato is standing right behind her, watching the Ice Queen melt into a cartoon. The shock hits like a physical blow. A strangled yelp dies in her throat as her legs give out. She hits the floor hard, her dignity evaporating instantly in the face of the ultimate witness. Minato scrambles to apologize, his grin sheepish as he admits he couldn't help but peek. Before Koyuki can process the humiliation, a massive shadow falls over them. It's Yuta, looking down from the stairs with a mix of concern and confusion. A hand reaches out, a huge, steady hand. Yuta offers her a way up, but from her spot on the floor, he looks less like a savior and more like a mountain. Her internal monologue screams one single undeniable fact: he's huge! Minato waves off the tension, but then he drops the bomb. He's always heard about her cold reputation, but that's ancient history now. He leans in with a grin, confirming her worst fear. Until I saw that funny face you were making. They head off with a casual wave, leaving her standing alone in the hallway. Koyuki offers a stiff, awkward nod, her brain short-circuiting as she tries to calculate the exact radius of her social destruction. The realization sinks in like a heavy stone. It's not just her class. The entire school thinks she's a terrifying ice queen. And now, the one person who knows she's actually a dork is a guy she doesn't even know. Meet the class idol. In every school there's always one girl who seems to exist in a different light, Miki Izumi, the goddess of Class 5. To the guys watching from the sidelines, she's at the absolute peak of the social hierarchy, surrounded by an invisible iron wall of popularity that's impossible for guys like them to climb. But Miki doesn't see the walls. She crashes right through the social divide with a casual hiya and an invitation to a post-exam snack party. Suzuki and Sato freeze, their brains short-circuiting as they try to summon the courage to say no. They scramble for excuses about club activities, leaving a heavy, awkward silence hanging between them. One look at Miki's disappointed face is all it takes to make their resolve crumble like wet paper. They fold instantly, stammering that they can probably drop by for a bit after all. And then she hits them with it, a smile so radiant it practically has its own sound effect. Thanks a lot, looking forward to it. That's the Miki Izumi effect. Nobody can turn down an invitation from the girl who treats everyone like a best friend. As she walks through the halls, she leaves a trail of charmed classmates in her wake, effortlessly ruling the school with a wink and a wave. But as the crowd thins out, the golden light of the idol starts to fade into the cool shadows of the hallway. Then there's the other side of the social spectrum. Koyuki Hikawa's gaze is a sharp contrast to Miki's sunshine, a cold, steady stare that feels like a physical weight. She's not trying to be intimidating, she's just breathing. But in these halls, silence is often mistaken for a threat. Koyuki arrives at class 1-2 only to find a stranger occupying her desk. Most people would just ask them to move, but for Koyuki, social interaction requires a literal cost-benefit analysis. On her internal scale, the effort needed to speak to a classmate is a massive mountain, while just standing there waiting in silence is a light breeze. The choice is easy. Well, guess I'll wait. She stands perfectly still, hovering like a vengeful spirit. To Koyuki, she's just killing time. To the girl in the chair, it's a psychological horror movie. The doom aura is so thick it practically rattles the windows. When the girl finally looks up and sees the Ice Queen looming over her, she nearly leaps out of her skin. "Ah, I'm so sorry for taking your seat." Saya-chan flees like she just escaped a predator, her heart hammering against her ribs. Even after she's gone, she can't shake the image of that terrifying wordless stare. Behind her, Koyuki finally sits down, completely oblivious to the fact that she just added another chapter to the school's urban legend of the frozen beauty. Koyuki is just perplexed. Did she do something wrong? Why was that girl apologizing? The class watches her with bated breath, convinced that someone like Hikawa-san probably doesn't even know how to laugh. As the final bell rings, she heads to the lockers, once again encased in a bubble of silence that no one dares to break. Her phone buzzes. It's Koyun, Miki's nickname for her. The text chain is a rapid-fire burst of energy, a stark contrast to Koyuki's quiet afternoon. Miki is coming and she's coming fast. Suddenly the screen starts filling up with numbers. A countdown. 10, 9, 8. Somewhere across the school, the class idol is running like she's in a marathon. Every ping on Koyuki's phone is another set of stairs conquered, another hallway blurred. The footsteps echo through the empty school, a frantic rhythm of tap 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 as the numbers on the screen drop lower and lower. The countdown hits 1. A shout of Koyun rips through the locker room as Miki skids around the corner, bent over and wheezing for air. She's a mess of sweat and desperation, gripping the lockers for support, but she's wearing a grin that's absolutely terrifying in its intensity. She snaps into a ridiculous peace sign pose, gasping out, "I'm safe." The absurdity of the class goddess acting like a total dork is too much. Koyuki tries to keep her face straight. The queen doesn't just crumble, but a small p escapes her. Miki's eyes light up. "Oh, did I make you laugh?" Miki keeps going, bragging about her fastest running record while Koyuki hides her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. The wall finally shatters. The girl who supposedly doesn't know how to laugh finally lets out a genuine, beautiful smile. She looks at her friend, the only person who sees her clearly, and delivers the ultimate punchline. "You're such an idiot." Miki is running on pure, frantic adrenaline, her arms swinging like she's trying to punch the air itself into submission. She's buzzing about walking home together, but the second Koyuki mentions the silence in the hallways, Miki's face does a total 180 into a frantic pout. She's genuinely wounded by the idea that her best friend might have missed her for a single second, shouting, "That's the point," while the guys in the clubroom marvel at Miki's seemingly flawless social grace. The girl in question is miles away, the sunset stretching long shadows across their walk as her energy begins to dip. The sunset paints the sidewalk in shades of orange, but Miki's energy is finally flatlining. She slumps, her eyes losing that frantic sparkle, and a heavy, hollow weight settles into her voice as she finally lets the mask slip. She stares at the ground, the silence between them suddenly fragile, before she whispers the truth, "I'm beat." Miki isn't looking for praise. She's looking for permission to be a disaster. She leans in, desperate and loud, begging Koyuki to stop treating her like a porcelain doll and start treating her like the middle school gorilla she truly is inside. It's a bizarre request, but for Miki, the saint title is a collar that's getting too tight. Miki is trapped under the weight of a saint reputation she never asked for. A pedestal that feels more like a cage. She wants to be loud, to be crude, to be the person who makes everyone lose their minds laughing instead of just nodding politely. Her hand tightens around her drink until the metal groans, the sharp crunch of the can acting as the only outlet for the pressure building behind her eyes. Koyuki doesn't offer a lecture or a grand gesture, she just offers herself. She looks at Miki with a gaze that isn't cold for once, but steady and grounding, promising a space where the saint doesn't have to exist. It's a quiet tether in a world of expectations, and the silence that follows isn't heavy anymore, it's safe. Koyuki sips her drink, admitting that while she's used to the quiet, she knows it's not for everyone. Miki leans back, her posture relaxing for the first time all day, wishing she had just a fraction of that solitude tolerance, so she wouldn't feel so exhausted by the crowd. It's the universal high school curse. The person everyone sees in the hallway isn't the person sitting on this bench. Koyuki realizes that even someone as bright as Miki is constantly fighting an image that isn't hers, a cold beauty or a perfect saint that neither of them asked to play. The heavy air lifts and Koyuki tries to pivot to the boys who've been disrupting her bubble lately. But her internal filing system is currently a mess. She can picture the brown-haired guy and the tall guy, but their actual names are currently out of reach. Koyuki's brain hits a dead end, her face going completely blank as she gives up on the thought entirely. Miki doesn't let her off the hook, grabbing her shoulders and shaking her like a malfunctioning vending machine to get the words out. Deflecting is the only survival tactic left, so Koyuki drops the exam bomb. But are you even studying for the exams? The emotional tension snaps as Koyuki goes for the jugular, pivoting from deep therapy straight into academic negligence. Miki's vulnerable aura evaporates, replaced by a defensive, stylish pose that tries way too hard to mask the fact that she hasn't looked at a textbook in days. She tries to pivot back, but the damage is done. Koyuki's caught her red-handed. Middle school, the time of your life where everyone is either a predator or a pet. For Koyuki, the boys have decided she's the latter, cornering her just to watch her squirm over an egg sandwich. She tries to blend into the locker line, clutching her lunch like a shield. But they're everywhere, hovering over her just to say they got the just an egg sandwich too. Then comes the classic middle school execution trap. One guy leans in with a smirk that says he knows exactly how much power he has. Out of the three of us here, who do you like the best? Her brain is a total blank. There's no right answer when the question itself is just a joke you aren't in on. They erupt. To them, her frozen silence is the punchline. They aren't talking to a person. They're poking a turtle and laughing because it pulled its head in. A sharp voice cuts through the noise, calling them exactly what they are: pests. Koyuki gets a pass, but the shame of needing a rescue is its own kind of weight. The advice is simple, so don't give them attention. It sounds so easy when you aren't the one being stared at. She wonders why her existence is a comedy show for people she's never even spoken to. Then there's the upperclassman, Igarashi. He looms over the crowd, apologizing for not seeing her from all the way up here with a grin that makes her stomach turn. He reaches out. A casual, heavy pat on her head. It's supposed to be affection, but the shiver that runs down her spine feels like a warning. Igarashi treats the world like his living room, completely blind to the fact that his good intentions are suffocating her. The pressure finally hits a breaking point. It's not a joke. It's not cute. It's not like I enjoy being short. To them, she's a mascot. Something to pet and tease for a quick laugh. They're worse than dogs. As long as they call it affection, they think they can do whatever they want. They never stop to ask if she's actually okay with being their plaything. So why do they keep trying to cross the line? If the outside world is just noise and grabby hands, she'll just draw her own borders. The gaze is too much, the voices are too close. The only thought left is a silent scream: just leave me alone. Flash forward to high school, and the strategy hasn't changed. The nurse's office is the only place where the air isn't thick with eyes. Eating here once again, Sensei lectures her on the nutritional value of sweet bread while a scraped-up kid provides the background noise. It's peaceful until it isn't, and even the nurse starts asking questions Koyuki isn't ready to answer. Outside, the hallway is a minefield of social circles and loud laughter. She cuts through them like a ghost, eyes down, shoulders tight. The quiet is her oxygen. It's the only time she feels like she can actually breathe without someone trying to turn her reaction into a spectacle. Then a familiar sound breaks the seal. A loud, unrestrained laugh that sounds exactly like trouble. There they are. Red slippers, first years, huddling together like it's a requirement for survival. She watches them from the edge of her own world, a silent judge of their noise. The guy from the class. The one who poked the ice. He's right there, laughing as if he hasn't already started dismantling her defenses. Until now, she thought she'd built the perfect wall, a structure designed to keep the world out and her sanity in. He turns. His eyes meet hers, and the distance she worked so hard to maintain suddenly evaporates. Lock. The hallway fades away. There's no wall thick enough to block a direct hit like this. Crap. She breaks the connection and bolts. Her heart is hammering a rhythm of pure retreat, looking for any distraction to look normal. But Minato isn't letting her fade into the background. He's watching the retreat, and the gears in his head are definitely turning. She tries to act casual at the vending machine. Curry drink? Absolutely not. Hot cocoa, it's safe, it's sweet, and it doesn't require a personality. She's got it. Hot cocoa, one button press away from safety. The air behind her shifts. A voice drops right into her ear, shattering the quiet. What's with the cold shoulder? Koyuki jumps, her finger slips, and the machine delivers a lead-heavy ka-thunk. She just bought the curry drink. Back in middle school, life had a volume problem, and his name was Tsubasa Igarashi. Every "hey there" and "what are you reading" felt like a needle to the eardrum for a girl who just wanted to exist in the margins. Koyuki spent those years pretending the little voice in her head wasn't screaming for silence, while Igarashi treated her quiet nature like a personal challenge to be loud. The noise became unbearable. It wasn't just a nuisance, it was a physical weight, like monkeys hanging off her shoulders, chattering about things that didn't matter. Her internal monologue finally fractured. Does he ever stop? She wondered, as the world outside her head crashed into a chaotic blur of raised voices and unwanted attention. While the other girls laughed along with the noise, Koyuki felt herself drifting. She wasn't part of the crowd, she was the scenery. It wasn't just narrow-mindedness, it was the sudden, cold realization that she had become a total outcast. Flash forward to the present, and the nightmare is repeating itself with a different face. Minato leans in, shattering her personal space with a blunt. What's with the cold shoulder? Koyuki's finger slips, the machine groans, and suddenly she's holding a can of warm curry instead of cocoa. Minato backpedals instantly, hands up, offering a boo-hoo for his accidental intimidation while Koyuki stares at the wrong drink in a daze. He doesn't seem like a bad guy, but the vibes are catastrophic. They are polar opposites. He's the guy who waves from the top of the ramparts while she's the one hiding in the basement, reinforcing the stones. She is wary, her eyes narrowing into that lethal glare that usually sends classmates running. But this guy? He's just laughing. He's a professional idiot who treats a hallway like a stage, and Koyuki is losing the thread of her own defense. He points a thumb at his chest with a grin. I'm Minato Amamiya. Before she can even process the name, his friends swarm in, dragging the volume up to a level that makes her teeth ache. They're loud, they're messy, and they're exactly the type of social storm she spent years trying to avoid. The mood is shifting, and not in a way Koyuki can handle. The hallway noise is a blur of "get out of here," and "don't mess with me," as she goes into full defensive mode. She leans into the intensity, her face darkening until the air around her feels like it's about to catch fire. But instead of running, Minato just grabs his own face. He pulls his cheeks out like putty, a literal clown in the face of her impending wrath. It's a total reboot of the social script. Koyuki can only blink, her brain short-circuiting as she scrambles to figure out why a human being would choose to look like that in public. The tactical menu opens in her mind. Get mad, too much effort, play it off? She doesn't have the range. Laugh? Absolutely not. She stares at the options and makes a high-stakes executive decision. I'll smile. She forces the muscles into what she thinks is a warm greeting. To the boys, it looks like a predator checking its teeth before a strike. Satisfied with her social victory, Koyuki gives a stiff bow and marches away, leaving Minato and his friends frozen in absolute soul-deep confusion. Minato is still trying to process if he just witnessed a miracle or a curse. Meanwhile, Koyuki massages her stiff jaw, genuinely proud of her performance. Even I impress myself sometimes, she thinks, convinced she just handled that interaction like a total pro. Two different worlds, one very confusing hallway interaction. The queen has spoken, the clown is baffled, and somewhere, a can of warm curry drink is waiting to be regretted. Minato is currently doing the mental gymnastics of a man who just saw a ghost and is trying to convince himself it was just a very pale pigeon. He's replaying that hallway encounter on a loop, wondering if his usual flirting finally hit a dead end, or if he just ran headfirst into a literal emotional fortress. He stares at the back of her head, the distance between them feeling less like a few feet and more like a tectonic shift. He can only chalk it up to one thing. He just hit the limit of a wall. Meanwhile, the rest of the school is operating on pure, unadulterated boy logic. While Minato has a crisis, Yuta is just trying to survive lunch with a baguette and a group of friends who decided human curling with a rolling dolly was a top-tier elective. It's loud, it's stupid, and it's exactly the kind of mindless chatter that makes the school day move. But even as they tell Minato he's making them look bad for ditching, the noise can't drown out his wandering thoughts. Welcome to Class 1-2, otherwise known as the place where fun goes to take a very long, very quiet nap. The contrast is staggering. No yelling, no dolly racing, just a thick, heavy blanket of hushed stillness while Koyuki sits at her desk, nursing a can of warm curry drink like it's the last bit of HP she has left. It's a room full of people choosing solitude, and in the middle of it, the Ice Queen sits alone, perfectly content in a world that smells faintly of processed spices. Minato is back in the lawless jungle of Class 1-6, but his brain is still stuck in that quiet hallway. He's trying to rationalize the predator grin she gave him, wondering if he somehow missed a secret signal, or if her face just does that. His friends are watching him glitch out, but in his head he's desperately searching for a manual on how to interact with a girl who looks like she's about to either confess her love or collect a soul. He snaps out of it with a panicked, "Wait, what?" Class 1-6 is a beautiful loud mess of people who don't think twice about their volume or their insults. It's the kind of place where you get roasted for spacing out and told to stuff a sock in it, double lids just for breathing. To Minato, this is the norm. It's easy, it's predictable, and it's a world away from the frozen, intimidating stillness of Hikawa. He looks around at the shouting and the laughter, starting to realize that maybe he and the Ice Queen aren't just in different classes, they're on different planets. He leans into the role of the class clown, cranking the volume to 11. He's making the faces, delivering the punchlines, and soaking up the easy wins. Everyone is laughing, the girls are giggling about how too much he is, and for a second, the social hierarchy makes perfect sense. But as he shouts, "Wait, why just me?" into the roar of the classroom, that one failed interaction with Hikawa still feels like a splinter he can't quite reach. He watches his friends, the pieces finally clicking together in his head. Humor isn't just about being funny, it's about the shorthand. It's the inside jokes, the shared history, the stuff you don't have to explain because you're already on the same page. When the vibe is right, everything lands bang on, but the Ice Queen doesn't have a page. She's a whole different book, and none of his usual tricks are going to work if there's no common ground to build on. He thinks back to those eyes, those sharp, unreadable brown eyes that seem to look right through his routine. He was expecting a fluster, a blush, maybe even a "quit that," or some sign that he'd rattled her cage. Instead, he got a reaction so bizarre it left him doubting his own social standing. She didn't laugh, she didn't get mad, she just turned into a terrifying smiling void that left him shivering in the hallway. Minato looks down, the playful energy finally settling into a quiet, pensive determination. He's been taking social cues for granted, skating by on easy charm and loud laughs. But Hikawa? Hikawa is a puzzle with no edges. She stands out from the crowd by simply refusing to join it, and her mean face is a barrier he hasn't learned to climb yet. He exhales, the reality of the situation finally landing. This is going to be harder than I thought. And there it is, the face that launched 1,000 awkward silences. The undisputed queen of the internal scream. The air in the hallway is thick with the kind of labels that stick like wet cement. Hikawa-san from Class 2. The girl who won't make eye contact, the girl who is apparently full of pride. Minato listens as his classmate laughs off her reputation with a jagged edge. Maybe Tani-yen got the cold shoulder from her and holds a pretty mean grudge. Ha 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 ha. Minato doesn't laugh. He just watches the profile of a girl who's becoming a much bigger shadow than the rumors suggest. He scans her movements, looking for the frost everyone keeps talking about. She looks cold, sure, but his gut is telling him something else. If his memory serves him right, Class 2 was always the quiet one, the one that kept its head down while everyone else screamed for attention. Maybe she isn't pushing people away, maybe there's just nobody on her frequency. This is Minato's specialty. He's always been the social locksmith, finding the hidden tumblers in the people everyone else gave up on. He sees the chains, the heavy locks of insecurity, and he knows that once you find the right combination, they're surprisingly nice people. He's spent his school life picking these locks, one smile at a time. He remembers the faces of the kids who stood on the edges of the room until he pulled them in. The ones who were not exactly the easiest to talk to until they found a common language. A simple, earnest thank you was always the payoff. But as he looks at Hikawa now, the lock feels different. Her eyes aren't a puzzle, they're a fortress. The keys are dangling, the tools are ready, but for the first time, Minato is hesitating. He watches her back, the straight line of her shoulders against the chaotic hum of the school. He's looking for the keyhole, but all he sees is a wall. He starts to wonder if the problem isn't the lock, but the room it's trapped in. If I was in her shoes, what would I do? He realizes that being the locksmith is easy when people want to be found. But what if the whole school is busy reinforcing the door? It's a pattern he can't unsee. Every time his eyes wander, they find her, standing alone by the window, walking through a crowd like she's a ghost. She's an island in the middle of a typhoon, and the silence around her is starting to feel heavy. Then comes the noise, the cheap, loud voices of guys who think social status is a weapon. Minato watches a boy lean back with a smug grin, playing a game of casual harassment, while his friends laugh along. I wish your girlfriend could see all the stupid things you get up to at school. It's the kind of locker room talk that makes the air feel dirty. A long, tired sigh follows. The guy doesn't care who hears him as he mutters about girls always getting deceived by guys like him. He's looking at her back, judging her for the crime of being in the same room while he acts like a clown. Hikawa's head dips. It's a tiny movement, almost invisible if you aren't looking for it, but she's shrinking under the weight of the laughter behind her. They aren't just talking, they're performing, and she's the unwilling audience for their mockery. But the boys aren't the only ones with knives. The girls watch from the sidelines, their whispers sharper and more precise. They see her silence and they read it as a performance. Look at you, acting like a victim, trying to win over the guys, thinking you're better than the rest of us. The air around her isn't cold because of her, it's cold because they made it that way. Alone at her desk, Koyuki grips her juice box until the cardboard gives way with a wet snap. She isn't crying, and she isn't looking for help. She just glares into empty air, her face twisted into a mask of pure, frustrated heat. She lets out a single, sharp chik-ch. The queen isn't arrogant, she's just sick of the noise. A quiet housing complex and the sharp sting of being noticed. Long before she was defined by her cold and unapproachable reputation, Koyuki Hikawa was just tiny, a target for every bored kid with a mean streak. They don't want anything specific, they just want a reaction. A hand reaches out, yanking her bag with a violent snap that forces her to turn around. She bites back, her voice shaking as she yells for them to leave her alone. She even swings a small, desperate fist that misses by a mile. But to them, her anger is just a punchline. They howl with laughter, pointing fingers as they shout, "Tiny got angry," and treat her genuine distress like a free show. The laughter follows her like a shadow. She wonders if there's even a point in speaking if the words never reach anyone. In her head, she dreams of being a monster, something dark and jagged that would send them screaming, or maybe she just wishes she was strong enough to make it stop. Then comes the whack. A hand flies from off-panel, connecting with the back of the bully's head with terrifying force. He goes down with a heavy whomp, the sidewalk suddenly much closer than he expected. Koyuki stares as a girl steps into the light, smiling like an executioner. "Whatcha up to, Porkchop-kun?" Miki doesn't just defend her, she dominates the space until they scatter like insects. Back then, Miki Izumi wasn't just a friend, she was a hero. Even now, watching that hero laugh and call herself a weirdo, Koyuki can't forget the girl who stood between her and the world. Flash forward to the present, and the hero is currently watching a different kind of tragedy. Minato Amamiya has officially hit the wall. Between the textbooks and the looming exams, his brain has checked out. "It's impossible," he groans. "I'm gonna die." Miki suggests a break over some red bean snacks. But Minato is spiraling. He realizes that since high school started, he's been flipping a switch the second he walks into class. He's been the clown so long he forgot how to just exist. The playful mask slips, leaving a boy who suddenly feels like a stranger to himself. He stares at the table, the weight of his own reputation starting to feel like a cage. He honestly doesn't know what his real self even looks like anymore. Slap! He hits both cheeks with a sound like a gunshot, killing the mood instantly. He's back to his frantic self, screaming about sounding like a wishy-washy poet. Miki just watches him vibrate, wondering if the exam stress finally snapped his last remaining gear. The panic is real if he fails. He's stuck in the same class as his brother. Seeking a change of scenery, Miki points out a map of the local community center. It's got self-study rooms, a neutral ground far away from the distractions of home. Miki remembers peeking in there once. The silence was so heavy she didn't even dare to enter. Everyone was so focused it felt like a battlefield. But the break is officially over. Koyuki points back at the math. They aren't leaving until the basics finally stick. The sun sets, the books finally close, and the trio heads for the stairs. Miki waves a cheerful goodbye, her saintly persona firmly back in place as she heads out. Koyuki watches them go, the house growing quiet as the footsteps fade away into the evening. Night settles over the neighborhood, the moon hanging bright and cold above the rooftops. A gate creaks open, a porch light flickers on. The day is finally coming to an end. Yuta Hino steps inside, pulling off his shoes. He's been out late too, studying at the very same community center they just talked about. It's a quiet reveal, a thread waiting to be pulled, as he mentions he'll probably be back late again tomorrow. The morning sun hits the desks in that perfect cinematic way that makes you feel like the day is actually going to be productive. Koyuki is soaking it in, enjoying the rare silence before the hallways turn into a mosh pit. Then she reaches into her bag. The piece dies instantly. Vocab notebook, vocab notebook. She's holding the evidence. Class 1-5, Miki Izumi. It's a long walk to the other side of the building, a total tactical nightmare for a social disaster like Koyuki. But Miki needs this for class. Duty calls, even if it means leaving the safety of her four walls. Koyuki peeks into the enemy territory, and there she is. Miki isn't just a student, she's an idol. A saint. Miki reborn. The girl is practically radiating high-frequency social energy that makes Koyuki's eyes physically hurt. It's a complete 180 from the crude best friend she knows, and it's honestly terrifying. She can't do it. The gap between her and the bright people is a canyon. She tells herself she'll just quietly drop the book and vanish before anyone notices the school's most unapproachable loner is invading their turf. One quick, stealthy exit. That was the plan. She slides the door open just a crack. Miki still hasn't arrived, so I'll just... Her eyes widen. The world turns into a dark blazer. Huh! It's not a wall, it's a skyscraper in a school uniform. The air leaves her lungs as she bounces off the sheer mass of the guy standing in the doorway. Everything starts to tilt. Time stretches. Her center of gravity is gone, and the floor is coming up fast. The notebook slips from her fingers, fluttering toward the tiles like a blue flag of surrender. A hand catches her arm, firm, steady, and way too close. Are you okay? Her heart is doing drum solos against her ribs. She looks up, and the recognition hits with the force of a second collision. It's him, the huge guy who helped her up before. He's staring. She's staring. His face is a mountain of calm, and she is a valley of pure anxiety. What? Wait is going on here? He finally breaks the silence with two words. Look, Koyuki. Her brain short-circuits and pulls a file from the childhood archives. The zoo. Why don't you give Mr. Giraffe something to snack on? Young Koyuki poked the beast, and it responded by trying to taste her thumb. It was traumatic. It was wet. And right now, this guy has the exact same energy. She gasps, the flashback fading into Hino's cheerful face. He doesn't look like he's going to bite her thumb, but the sheer scale of the man is still a lot to process. You're that girl from the other day? He's all smiles, completely ignoring how visibly she's currently vibrating with stress. He admits he's a bit blind today because he forgot his contacts, which explains why he's leaning in so close. I'm okay, she stammers, practically backing into the doorframe. He picks up Miki's book and realizes the situation. He doesn't even know where Miki sits, but he's already leading the way. Smear. He's so casual about it, totally ignoring the social barriers that usually keep Koyuki paralyzed and stuck. He's just a big guy being helpful, and it's throwing her whole worldview for a loop. He finds a spot on the desk and suggests leaving a message. He's used to writing on his friends' desks, acting like the classroom is just his living room. Koyuki watches him, her guard dropping just a fraction. He's definitely the laid-back guy type. No sharp edges, just sheer volume. I'll catch you later, Himuro-san. She freezes. He's already walking away with a wave, totally confident in the wrong name. My name isn't Himuro, she mutters to the empty air. It's too late. The giant has left the building, and the school bell is ringing for the next chapter of her day. Quentu 601 Miki is still stuck in homeroom purgatory. Her texts are a mess of homeroom's been dragging forever, and stickers of crying dogs. Koyuki is left out in the cold, literally. She's standing at the gate, checking her map, wondering if she should just go ahead to the community center on her own. Then the mumble starts. Whatcha doing all alone there? Two guys older, smelling like bad decisions and fake charm. They've been watching her circle the block, and they've decided she looks like easy prey. Too close, she thinks, her pulse spiking as they box her in with her own phone screen. They point toward a black car. Just over there is where I parked my car. The air turns to lead. Koyuki tries to walk away. A polite, I'm good, thanks, dying in her throat as a hand clenches her sleeve. The world starts to shudder. This isn't a social awkwardness moment. This is danger. The laughter behind them is the worst part. It's that mocking, predatory theft that triggers every alarm in her head. This is the exact kind of vibe she has no idea how to deal with. The world is turning into a dark, swirling mess of voices and jiwaya-ha-has that make her feel tiny. She needs to run, but her legs are like stone. Then she sees them, red and green sneakers. A silhouette she recognizes from a collision just hours ago. He's right there, a lighthouse in the fog of these creeps. She doesn't think. She just moves. The scarf feels tight around her neck, her breath hitching. Hino looks over, his expression shifting from neutral to surprised as the classmate who isn't named Himuro closes the distance. She grabs his hand. It's warm, solid, and massive. The guys behind her stall out, the threat evaporating against the literal wall of Hino's back. Koyuki is safe, but as she stands there, holding onto a lifeline, only one thought is running through her head. I don't know his name. Her mind is a total blank. The name is gone, replaced by a wall of static and the heat of these creeps breathing down her neck. She waves her hands like a frantic signal fire, desperate to reach the only recognizable silhouette in the crowd. Giraffe-san! The massive boy stops. He turns. She's been seen. Hino leans on the railing, looks her right in the eye, and then he just walks away. The humiliation hits like a physical blow, sharper than the fear. The two guys behind her explode into laughter, feeding on the sight of the Ice Queen getting ghosted in broad daylight. She's just a joke to them now. The shadows of the harassers loom over her, their voices a slimy drone telling her to loosen up. But the fear is curdling into something hotter. Her hand clenches into a white-knuckled fist at her side as the crosswalk light turns green. She's done being the victim of a bad joke. She snaps, I'm not going anywhere with you. She turns to run and slams headfirst into a wall of dark fabric and solid muscle. It's him. He didn't leave, he just took the long way around to get behind them. The impact sends a jolt through her, but his presence is a heavy anchor in the storm. Sorry about that, you okay? Her eyes widen as the realization hits. He was coming back for her. Hino looms over her with a bright, knowing grin that shatters the tension of the street. I knew it. Hino apologizes for the wait, explaining he had to find the crosswalk. Koyuki doesn't let him finish. She leans in close, her hands cupping her mouth as she drops her pride for the sake of survival. Could you please pretend to be my friend? Hino's eyes pop in surprise, but he doesn't miss a beat. They lean in together, a staged huddle that looks far more intimate than it is. She waves a dismissed hand at the creeps over her shoulder, her voice steadying as she plays the part of a girl with backup. Hino doesn't need to throw a punch. He just turns. It's a slow, deliberate pivot that feels like a mountain shifting its weight. He levels a glare at the harassers that is cold, sharp, and absolutely lethal. The question mark in their heads instantly turns into a frantic period. The guys falter, their bravado evaporating against Hino's size. They squint, trying to figure out if he's actually dangerous or just massive. Ultimately, they decide not to find out. As they beat a hasty retreat, they mutter about him probably just being some giant high school kid. The danger passes and Koyuki drops into a deep, formal bow. Thank you so much for your help. Hino stands there looking baffled, his head tilted as she shakes hers frantically, explaining they weren't her friends. Looking up at him, she can't help but feel a tiny bit of envy for that literal height advantage. He really is tall. Hino gives her a casual smile, assuming a girl like her must be the center of attention. You must be pretty popular then. The words send a visible shiver down her spine. She's not popular, she's feared. No, that's not it, she shouts, her voice cracking under the crushing pressure of her reputation. She knows that look. She knows the way people use the mood or a game to justify cruelty. To them, she isn't a person with feelings. She's just a challenge or a target. There's no kindness in their excuses, only the cold satisfaction of looking down on someone else. She pulls her scarf higher, hiding the hurt. Hino watches her, his hand on his chin in deep thought. He takes her serious explanation and offers the most direct solution possible. Maybe you should have just punched them in the face? Koyuki freezes. It's so absurd, so blunt, that the heavy atmosphere just snaps. She begins to apologize, feeling guilty for using a near stranger as a human shield, but Hino just laughs it off. He isn't upset in the slightest. His genuine, easygoing nature is so different from what she expected that she can only stare, her wide eyes searching his face for a hidden agenda she won't find. It turns out they're both heading toward the community center. Hino's suggestion is simple and terrifyingly normal. How about we go there together? Koyuki hesitates, her brain cycling through 100 reasons to say no, but eventually a small sure escapes her lips. Hino offers his first name with a casual grin, bypassing the usual formal hurdles. I'm Yuta. For Koyuki, the idea of using a first name is like trying to jump a 10-foot fence. She clears her throat, finally correcting the record. Actually, my name isn't Himuro, it's Hikawa. They walk in sync, the steady tempi of their sneakers the only rhythm in the cold air. Koyuki stares at her shoes, realizing with a sting of annoyance that she was only 5 minutes away the whole time. Was she literally going in circles while panicking? The silence stretches. Hino's profile is calm, but Koyuki is vibrating with the effort of not being weird. 5 minutes feels like an hour when you're walking next to a human lighthouse and can't think of a single thing to say. Hino finally breaks the quiet. Are you and Miki close? The question is a lifeline. Koyuki confirms they've been together since elementary school, living close enough to share every awkward stage of growing up. He sounds genuinely happy to hear it. Hino reminisces about cram school and entrance exams, his smile widening as he thinks of their friend. I think Miki really shines when she just acts like herself, don't you? Koyuki looks at him, wondering if he's seen the crude, silly side that Miki hides from the rest of the world. They share a laugh, a rare moment of genuine connection in the middle of a mundane street. Hino admits he just wants to tell the whole world about it. It's a warm realization for Koyuki. No matter who you are or what mask you wear, there's always someone who sees the real you and stays anyway. Koyuki is still stuck on the deal they made, but Hino looks down at her, his expression softening into something sincere. We don't have to pretend to be friends, do we? The question hangs in the air, heavier and more important than any street harassment. For the first time, the Ice Queen doesn't feel so frozen. They stop to exchange the final pieces of the puzzle. He's Yuta Hino, you as in sunshine, no as in field, and she's Koyuki Hikawa. They trace the characters in the air, a small ritual that makes the connection official. But as they talk, someone else is watching. Hey, isn't that Yuta? Up in the burger joint, Minato freezes. He'd know that massive silhouette anywhere, but it's the girl next to him that makes his heart skip a beat. They look comfortable. They look close. From the second floor, the world he thought he was unlocking suddenly looks like someone else has the key. Koyuki is smiling. Not the scary social smile she practices in the mirror, but a real warm look that reaches her eyes. Minato stares down, his burger forgotten, his expression a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. He came here to be the locksmith, but it looks like someone else just walked through the front door. Miki walks into the study center expecting silence and finds a miracle instead. There sits the school's legendary Ice Queen and the campus giant, Yuta Hino, looking like they're sharing state secrets. Before Miki can even process the sight, Koyuki catches her eye and leans in. I saved you a seat, Miki, she whispers, her face sporting a tiny, mischievous smile that says she knows exactly how weird this looks. The questions are piled up in Miki's throat, but every time she opens her mouth, a finger goes up. Shh, not here. The world's most unlikely duo is holding the quiet hostage. Miki finally slumps into her seat, a knot of pure curiosity twisting in her gut as she tries to focus on her notes. She'll get her answers, but for now, the only sound is the rhythmic scratch of pens and the thrum of her own disbelief. The second they step into the night air, the dam breaks. Miki is practically vibrating. This is crazy. Since when did you guys know each other? She shrieks, her voice cutting through the quiet street. Yuta just laughs, a deep, grounded sound that makes everything feel simpler. It turns out the secret isn't a secret at all, just a gap in history. They weren't strangers, they were childhood friends from the same cram school. Mickey's jaw hits the pavement as the realization lands. You should have told me about Koyun before I came. They walk as a trio now, the cold night air biting at their cheeks. Yuta explains why he's always at the study center. Apparently, his house is a war zone of younger siblings and noise. Mickey listens, impressed by the discipline it takes to seek out silence when your own home is an orchestra of chaos. Koyuki watches them, her usual wall of ice slowly melting in the heat of their easy practiced friendship. Pit. Stop at a vending machine. Yuta looms over the thing like he's checking it for lunch money, dropping a 1,000 yen bill into the slot with a metallic whir. He offers to buy everyone a drink, a small gesture of friendship, but the machine has other plans. A sudden violent clatter of coins erupts, spraying change across the sidewalk like a broken jackpot. Geez, Miki yells as they all scramble to catch the rolling silver, the dignity of the evening vanishing in a frantic hunt for stray yen. Koyuki tries to decline, waving her hands in a panic, but Miki isn't having it. She's got a system. She decides they should both get the same soup so they can say how great it tastes together. It's the kind of pushy, logic-defying kindness that only Miki can pull off. Koyuki watches her, thinking about how inherently selfish that logic is, but she can't help the small hee-hee that escapes her lips. Even the Ice Queen can't resist a shared warm drink on a cold night. Koyuki looks down at her warm can, the heat seeping through her gloves. Seeing Yuta and Miki together makes the pieces of the puzzle fall into place. They weren't just classmates, they were a unit. Miki and I hung out with Minato back then, like a group of 3, Yuta says, his voice nostalgic. The name hits the air and lingers, a reminder that the world Koyuki is just now entering has roots that go back years. The mention of Minato makes Miki freeze, her eyes darting to Koyuki to see if the name registers. She immediately shifts into tease mode, poking fun at the idea that things might be awkward between them now. But beneath the haha and the jokes, there's a flicker of something real, a history that isn't all sunshine. Koyuki watches the exchange, feeling the gravity of the names. Yuta and Miki and Minato, the original 3. The conversation drifts to names. Yuta admits he's not a fan of honorifics, too stiff, too formal. He asks if he can use the nickname Miki uses. Koyun. It's a soft name, one that strips away the queen reputation and leaves just the girl beneath. Miki looks absolutely smug about it, enjoying the role of the matchmaker who bridged these two worlds. For once, Koyuki doesn't mind the lack of distance. They reach the ticket gates, the bright fluorescent lights of the station signaling the end of the night. Yuta waves a hand, a broad, easy grin on his face as he promises to see them tomorrow. Koyuki watches him go, her heart feeling a little lighter than when the day started. The group of 3 has expanded, and for the first time, the girl once known for her cold distance doesn't feel like she's standing on the outside looking in. Back in the quiet of his room, Minato is a million miles away from the warmth of the station. The only sound is the aggressive buzz of his phone against the desk. He picks it up expecting a joke or a study question, but the voice on the other end is Saya-chan, and she sounds like the world is ending. Sorry Minato, but can we meet up right now? Her voice is small, stripped of its usual bite. There's something I need to talk to you about. Minato gazes at the blank screen as the call ends, the weight of her distress settling in his chest. No jokes, no clever locksmith tricks, just a heavy looming silence. Whatever is coming, it's not about study groups or lighthearted jealousy. He leans back, his expression unreadable, staring into the shadows of his room as the night takes a sharp, serious turn. The night air is biting, a piercing cold that makes your breath hitch, but on this bench, the silence is even sharper. Minato sits there, the locksmith trying to read the room, even when the room is just a girl wrapped in a scarf and a street lamp that's seen better days. He tilts his head, that easy, practiced mask sliding into place as he asks, "Something happened lately? No jokes, no tricks, just the waiting game." Next comes the hammer. She doesn't scream, doesn't cry, she just lets the words hang in the freezing air. "Let's break up." Minato doesn't flinch, he doesn't even drop his drink, he just stares back, eyes wide and terrifyingly empty, as she delivers the final blow. "Because I can't trust you." Her face is a map of misery, tears welling up as she realizes the person in front of her is a hollow shell. She's been feeling this rot growing every time they meet, a suspicion that he's just playing a part. She hides her face in her hands, sobbing out the question that strips him bare. Deep down inside, do you really even have a you? Minato just looks at her, his expression a flat, unreadable horizon. While his ex is likely still crying into her pillow, Minato is back at home, acting like he just finished a boring grocery run. His sister doesn't buy the nothing urgent act for a second, especially not when he's this calm after being gone so late. He's unfazed, detached, and currently more interested in avoiding a trip to the convenience store than the reality that his relationship just turned to ash. The next morning at school, the tragedy has become a comedy. His friends are absolutely ruthless, laughing in his face while they comfort him. They see right through the mask. The way his words of heartbreak don't match the bored look in his eyes. To them, he's just a guy who goes through breakups like most people go through socks, and the sting is non-existent. Minato tries to play the victim, leaning his head on the desk, but his friends are having none of it. They're literally ruffling his hair like a disobedient puppy while shouting warnings to any girl within earshot. Don't let yourself be tricked by a guy like him. It's loud, it's chaotic, and it's the only truth anyone's told in this room all day. But the jokes fade when Yuta walks in. Suddenly, Minato isn't thinking about his ex. He's thinking about yesterday. He's thinking about the towering saint of the class and the person who's supposed to be untouchable. The clock is ticking toward a collision he didn't plan for. Minato goes in for the kill, fishing for details while asking, "Was that Hikawa-san you were walking home the other day?" Yuta doesn't even blink, just gives a sheepish grin and a shrug. He's too honest for his own good, or at least that's what Minato is trying to figure out as he stares into the giant's eyes, looking for a crack in the story. Yuta's story is almost too perfect, a chance encounter, a simple walk together. Minato plays along with a sarcastic, "is thought so?" But the universe has a sense of humor. The infirmary door slides open with a sharp swish, and there she is. Koyuki stands frozen in the doorway, caught right inside a conversation she wasn't supposed to hear. Dead silence. Minato, with his arms behind his head, locks eyes with the Ice Queen. It's the kind of stare that makes you forget how to breathe. For a split second, the social masks drop, leaving only pure, unadulterated shock. Koyuki is internally screaming, her social anxiety flaring up like a signal fire. She struggles to force a smile. Smile. Come on, smile. While her hands grip her blazer until her knuckles turn white. Yuta just leans in, oblivious to the nuclear meltdown happening 2 inches from his face, asking what's going on with a cheerful grin. And then Yuta drops the nickname, Koyun. It's a casual, intimate bullet that hits Minato right in the ego. He repeats it in his head, the word tasting like copper. While Yuta and Koyuki share a moment of genuine, comfortable warmth, Minato is left on the outside looking in, his suspicion hardening into a jagged edge. Nurse Sensei isn't here for the drama, she just wants the cold air out of her office. She shoos them away like stray cats, breaking the tension with a blunt reality check. As they shuffle into the hallway, Minato tries to reclaim some ground, but Koyuki is already mentally halfway to her locker, her polite wall firmly back in place. She gives a small, tentative smile, a see you later that feels more like a dismissal. Minato watches her go, his eyes narrowed, searching for any sign that the girl he's trying to unlock is being opened by someone else first. The tap-tap-tap of her shoes echoes down the hall, a rhythmic reminder of the gap between them. Minato stands there, the locksmith with a broken pick, staring at her retreating back. He doesn't believe in luck, and he certainly doesn't believe in this. Did they really just happen to bump into each other by chance? He forces a cool response, but the thought bubble tells a different story. The locksmith is officially rattled.